Good afternoon, Big Sounders. Thank you for being here. It's lovely to be back. Before I start, I'd like to pay my respects to the traditional owners of the land we meet on today, the Yagara and Turrbal people. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and future. Now, when Maggie Collins, Big Sound's executive programmer, called me and asked me if I wanted to interview Kenny Gates, I didn't say yes straight away. I was, of course, aware of Kenny's company, PS, and I knew of Kenny himself, but I didn't know that much about him and I hadn't met him. I wanted to do some research before I said yes. So I did. It took all of 1 minute on Google to realize that Kenny was someone I wanted to speak to. Took that minute to realize that Kenny and his business partner, Michele, were two people who changed the music business forever. In reflecting on his business and accomplishments, I realized that I, and the vast majority of my colleagues and people here at this conference, have benefited from Kenny's groundbreaking career in the music business. It's hard to imagine that the simple act of distributing great music in the early 1980s was a revolutionary thing for our business. These days we take for granted the ability to get brilliant, creative, weird and inspiring music into stores and then into the hands of fans. But it wasn't always like that. Before Kenny came along, access to market on any large scale was simply not available to independent artists and those that work with them. As a manager and a label owner myself these days, I know my life in music would have been incredibly different if it weren't for the business that Kenny started 35 years ago in his parents' basement. PS is now one of the largest and most successful recorded music companies in the world. They have offices in 16 countries, more than 300 staff, and they recently made a huge investment in the Australian market by buying Inertia Music. Bless them. One last little observation before we get this started. Without exception, great music companies are owned by people who have the rare combination of business savvy and a pure love for music. Kenny's one of those rare people, and I'm delighted that he's here in Australia and delighted to welcome him to the stage. Kenny Gates.
Thank you.
Okay. These systems are working.
Is it working?
Yeah, I'm going to pour you a glass of water first.
Got whiskey for me?
I wish.
Full house. Wow.
I'm sure. All right, got some good lumbar support here.
So,
Brussels, what was that like?
sprouts. Waffles.
Brussels sprout. Tell us about Brussels.
Brussels is where I was born, and it's a little capital city of Belgium, very central. We got cable TV in the 70s, so we had access to many channels very early on, which allowed this center being the center of a lot of cultures, learning German, French, English obviously. So Brussels is small but beautiful.
You were exposed to a lot of music as a child in Brussels?
Yeah. My brother played me Dark Side of the Moon in 1975, and it was a revelation. And then as a kid, I used all my pocket money given by my mother to buy lunch at school. I used it to buy 7-inch singles.
Okay, so you're a skinny music fan?
Yeah.
Okay. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the origin story of PS, those record stores, and the first time you met your partner, Michele, at Casablanca Moon. Tell us that story.
Oh, well, I was going to this record store, and it was called Casablanca Moon. It had loads of posters of Bader Meinhof, really anarchist, heavy stuff on the walls. And the first time I came in, it was Throbbing Gristle, played really loud, and it was really scary, but really interesting. And I used to buy records there, and then I asked Michele, who was behind the counter, I said, how come I can find a Joy Division record and I can't find a Cure album here, or I can't find an Echo and the Bunnymen, I can find a Depeche Mode album? And he said, well, because they are on independent labels, and I only sell music from independent labels. So I asked him, what is an independent label? So I got the education. And when the shop closed, because Michele believed in taking 5% markups and loved partying, which didn't really fit the model, we decided to become business partners. And he also had a record label with the fantastic name of Sandwich Records.
Savage Records.
Sandwich, yes.
Okay.
And branding wasn't our strength. So I learned how to make an album. The first album was Polyphonic Size, produced by J.J. Burnell.
Okay.
And I lent the money to Michele to press the first 1,000 albums. And we went to get the vinyl from the pressing plant, get the sleeves from the printing plant. And in his car, I was sleeving and going from shop to shop to sell a few pieces of each album. And that's how I learned about what music was about, independent labels, and making an album.
It's pretty wonderful. And so, after that first record, you were working from your parents' basement, is that right?
Yeah.
And was it a smoke and mirrors situation? Were you and Michele going out convincing people you were a huge operation, or?
No. No, we were taking my car, and we were traveling to London on the night boat, and just calling into Southern Studios and Pinnacle and Glass Records and Armour Road Beggars, and just buying records from 4AD and Beggars Banquet and from several independent labels and putting them in the car, vinyl of course at the time, bringing them over and then calling a few stores and being an importer.
Okay.
And suddenly we started selling quantities of Sister of Mercy and Alice, Temple of Love, Blue Monday. I think Blue Monday is the first record we sold more than 1,000 of.
Okay, wow. And so was the, at what point did you realize, or in those early days, did you have, I guess, a kind of broader vision, or were you taking it on a day-by-day basis?
Could you repeat that?
Oh, sorry. Sorry, my Australian accent and mumbling won't
Excuse
help.
me?
Did you have a vision of what you wanted your company to be in those days, or?
Well, I had models. I was in love with these independent labels, Mute and Rough Trade and Factory Records and Beggars and 4AD were my model. I wanted to be them, really.
Okay.
I wanted to be in that business. I wanted to do the same thing.
Okay.
And so when you're 19 years of age and you do something out of passion, you don't really realize what you're doing. There isn't a vision. There is just an urge to do something, when like you need to pee, you just need to pee. It's something you have to do. So that was what I wanted to do, is just be in the business. And I convinced my parents to stop going to university for a year. I told them, listen, let me try and do this. At the very least, I'll have 3 records, and that will be a good saving.
It's a no-lose situation. That's a wonderful piece of, it's a good quote. You need to pee.
The peeing one.
So, at what point, amongst all this peeing, did you realize that you were onto something? That you really, at what point were you like, holy shit, this is going to work, this is going to be something?
I don't know if there's an answer to that. Sometimes you climb up a mountain and you don't realize you're climbing, and suddenly you look under you and you say, holy shit, if I fall now, what happens? I've done all of this without realizing it, and there's been some milestones. Obviously, when we signed Front 242, and I got the limousine service and the 5-star in the peninsula in New York from Sony, and suddenly we're selling hundreds of thousands of albums. It was a different game. And when New Beat, which was this strange Belgian electronic movement, started in 1988, our reps were suddenly, they were going to stores where they were selling 3s and 4s and 5s of our import records, and suddenly they were coming back with orders of 50, 100, 150, and it was exploding, and we were working in the warehouse until midnight. But there's been many milestones, but every time the vision was, and still is today, to create an international company which can service artists not only in Belgium or in Europe, but everywhere. And that is, it's a never-ending story, just to try and improve and get better at what we do.
Okay, and do you think being in Belgium, do you think that actually provided you with that advantage? I mean, you already mentioned that being right there in the center of Europe with all the, like, I guess, with all these cultures coming in, do you think that helped you and helped with the development of PS? Do you think you could have done it from elsewhere?
Well, obviously not.
Well, you didn't have to do it from elsewhere.
I don't know, but I think being from a country which is off the radar has helped, and being able to be at the center of Europe and not being burdened by the local market, and the local market being very limited. Very early on, the outlook was to expand and invest outside of this little market. And yes, it's using the center part of Brussels and Belgium as being the heart of Europe, as a nucleus and as a hub to be able to expand elsewhere. But you know, as a Belgian, or half English, half Belgian, meaning something and trying to exist in the UK was very difficult, because you know, the Brits are the Brits, and they like, you know, England is difficult to penetrate and be credible there. It took years and years and years to be meaningful. We were the Belgians for a very long time, and probably still are.
Yeah, I mean, looking back at sort of the history of like some of those releases in the 80s and early 90s, I mean, you were working records by New Order, Pixies, KLF, and then later in the 90s, Oasis, Tom Waits, AFX Twin. I mean, you weren't just...
Muse. Garbage.
Big ones.
Offspring. Yeah. Offspring was amazing. You know, Offspring, we sold... In 94, 95, we sold 600,000 Offspring in Benelux and France. It's an amount of records you can't imagine these days anymore.
Yeah. Do you think it's kind of an observation I make from afar, but companies like yours, they don't tend to grow, say, on an annual cycle. They grow on a hit-by-hit basis, right? You just have to grow and develop every time you get, you know, another Muse or another Offspring. Is that right?
It's organic growth. It's not like, you know, we've got a business plan and we've got an investor. We need to deliver profits in year 3, 4, and 5, and that's the plan. It was just like organic, based on opportunity, based on meeting the right people at the right moment, and on a hunch and based on instincts. Nothing planned, really.
I think you underplay the business savviness of it's all a big accident.
Maybe. But in hindsight, it's easy to say, oh, it was, you know, it's amazing and what a great plan they had. But the truth is, you know, the beauty of hindsight, it's easy to say there was a great plan, but the only plan was really to have this idea that very early on, I understood what the major system was. I signed a band and licensed it to a major, and realized that the person who was in love with the band I had signed to, him or her, couldn't fulfill the promise they were making. They couldn't release internationally. They couldn't convince their partner. The system is a vertical system at the majors. So I had to rely on someone to keep my promise to the artist. And I decided, I don't want that. I want to create a presence in every country in the world. That was my vision, where the promise we can make can be kept because the people on the ground think locally, know the local market, and I have the control on these companies to be able to not go through political bullshit and be able to promise the artist, yes, in Germany, in the UK, in Italy, in Australia, in America, you will be taken care of. And that's, to me, the most important thing, is to say to an artist, you can rely on me, and I can only rely on ourselves to fulfill our promises. And I think that's where we are at PS at the moment, is we've achieved what I believe is the largest international independent network where we can release the artists we commit to everywhere in the world with the same love and commitment than we would in the local territory. And that to me is essential.
So you kind of skipped ahead 20 years. There's one moment, I mean, Kenny has a blog called The Independent Echo, and it's well worth your reading. It's really enjoyable. I love the interviews on it. But one of my favorite, or basically the first thing I read about the things you do was was the wonderful transcript of this speech you gave in Ibiza, I think last year, how I sold my company and bought it back. And I think that's a fascinating story. Tell us about it. You can all read it, but I want to hear it from you.
Yeah, it's all about money, really. You know, money is important. Money is a double-edged sword. When you don't have money, you wish you had money, and when you have money, you realize that there is a price attached to the money you get. Let me explain that. I sold the company to Edel in 1999. Edel was, and still is, a German independent label. And they went on the stock exchange and got a multiple of 27 times their profit. They offered to buy PS. And to cut a long story short, because it's a long story, we decided to sell 74.9% to Edel, and because with 25.1% we could retain control. So it was the end of the 90s, and the money floating around, and it's coming back now, the money floating around for deals was crazy, and we didn't have the capital to compete, and it was very frustrating to see all our bands go for advances we couldn't compete with. So we thought that at the time, and we were talking about hindsight, which is great, but at the time we thought it was a good idea, and I don't regret it, to sell the company, get a huge amount of capital investment, and suddenly have money to compete, but keep control, because what Edel offered us is to keep control of the board, even though they got majority. I know it's difficult for someone from the financial community to understand that, but it actually happened. So there was nothing was no trick. There was no, on paper, we got capital investment and we kept control. And so there was no downside, except that when you have access to so much capital, it's a bit like in soccer or in football now. Small clubs with the TV monies get a lot of money, but a player, instead of costing 5 million, now costs 25 million. So everything gets elevated. And when you get this kind of money, you get a lot of new friends, a lot of bees come and circle over the honeypot.
Yeah.
And so we got carried away, made many mistakes, and really that story was very, that the whole episode lasted 3 years, and after 2 or 3 years, Edel got in trouble because they didn't only buy PS, but they bought I think 43 companies in 2 years. And the stock value went from 100 euros down to €1 in a few months. And so they had to backpedal and offered to buy our controlling stake, which I said no to. So we bought back the shares back and carried on.
I think your quote at that time was, "I didn't want to be 38 years old, holding a big bag of cash, but essentially jobless." It sounds okay.
Yeah, but the thing is, why do we? And that's why I do this echo, this blog. You know, it's not about money. What do you do with a lot of money? You know, buy one Maserati, and then you've got more money. You buy two Maseratis, and then one Ferrari and two Ferraris. When you've got 5 Ferraris, what do? You go to Hollywood and you buy a big house, and then what do?
I would go to
you just hang around with the wrong people and get bored? No, I mean, what we do is exciting. We love our work. We love being, you know, involved and breaking artists. That's the real kick. It's that really is exciting. Getting up in the morning and having a job which you love is a privilege. It's like so many of my friends, so many people I know have great jobs. They call great jobs. They're well paid, but they're essentially bored. And I'm never bored, and we're never bored, and that's exciting. That's the purpose of what we do. It's fantastic.
Yeah, so is that something you realized in 2002? Or actually, side question, which you don't have to answer. Did you make a profit when you bought your company back?
I don't have to answer.
No. Well, I mean, you can if you want. We'd like you to.
Listen, the truth is, of course we made a profit, but people say, yeah, Michele and Kenny were smart. They bought the company back for much less than what they sold it for. That's true, but we bought a company which essentially was bankrupt, because we were induced and invited and kind of forced to invest a lot. When we got this big war chest, we had to expand really quickly, and we made mistakes. So when we bought it back, we bought a company with 500 people in there, big warehouses we had committed to, and we had to put most of our money back into the company to cash flow it. We had to find new investors. And yes, we made a profit, but not as, you know, meaningful as people might want to think. And it was like 2 or 3 years of really, you know, it was really difficult.
Okay. I mean, you say around this time you had another, I guess, epiphany, which we were talking about backstage, and you made a wonderful yogurt analogy. When you were thinking about how to run the business and push forward.
Yes, the analogy was about Danone. Danone, you call it, the yogurt company?
Yoplait, Danone, I don't know how to pronounce it.
Okay. Well, it's a French company, and around 1920, I learned, they were basically providing glass bottles to lots of industries. And they were a company who were making glass bottles. And suddenly they had a change of business model and decided to fill the bottles and sell the bottles with yogurt inside or milk inside. And that really inspired me in what I should be doing with PS, because until 10 years ago, we were primarily a distribution company, and 90% of our revenues was distribution. Distribution is great, but you depend on third parties, and I started, you know, realizing that when you build mushroom sells to Warner, we lost Muse, we lost Garbage, we lost all the acts that we had been working on. When Mute sold to EMI, same thing, you know, you were talking about early successes. We were the licensee of Beggars Banquet and Mute in most European territories at some point, with Moby, with Prodigy, with Nick Cave. We gave Nick Cave, I think, his first gold record ever in Belgium. When Mute sells to EMI, you know, you can't rely. We were not in control of our own destiny, and that's not good for a business. Same with Eagle Rock when they sold to Universal. I mean, the examples are through in the last 35 years, the amount of labels we worked with and then sold to majors made me feel insecure and uncomfortable about the long term and longevity of the business. So we decided that our business plan should be to fill the tubes of our distribution with our own repertoire. And so we decided to invest in our own repertoire and into copyright and have and we bought Co-op in 2012 from Universal, and we now have a whole portfolio of associated labels, which make our business now is 50% of our turnover is our own repertoire, and 50% is distribution. So that makes us feel more comfortable about the longevity of the business, because we can rely on our own selves to sustain ourselves.
And I mean, how do you feel? I mean, obviously that seems like a very, very smart, prescient idea at the time, and it feels like these days more and more people, it feels like there's a swing to a lot more investment in repertoire. This is something you did 10 years ago. I mean, is this a trend you're seeing and observing across the world, or is it unique to PS? Are there other Russian oligarchs driving up the price?
Well, I think, again, the flies are... I won't make any analogy there. The sharks are smelling money with streaming. You know, streaming is very interesting. It's very good in some ways and horrible in others. But definitely now, the big investors and the companies backed by pension funds see a long-term return in copyright and in streaming. Where 5-6 years ago, if you went to a bank and asked for a loan, you know, everybody would say the music industry was dead, and now it's been a complete switch and shift in the thinking. So there's a lot of money floating around in people wanting to acquire copyright, so yeah, you know, it's a problem.
So yeah, I mean, one of the things you said in that keynote was that it takes time for artists and labels to develop. And that's a thing that a stock exchange can never understand. But essentially, you think that's changed now. They're like, it's not true anymore.
Well, I think the catalog is really where people want to invest. Catalog is a no-risk business. You just make it. It's like become a bit like publishing. You know you have drips of return every month, every day, every year with streaming. So investors like catalog because they don't have. It's a no-risk business, and it's just about the investment. It's pure financial exercise. We at PS, we're still in the business of developing new artists. You know, we want to develop new artists, break them, give them the access to the market, get them on the radio, get them in the press, get them to tour, get them exposed, and try and break them. But thank God we also have a catalog, so we can invest with our income from our catalog into new artists.
To give some context, tell us some Australian artists that you're working with.
Well, we work with the licensee of Flume in Europe. We have Lisa Mitchell on Play It Again Sam, our label. We have Chet Faker, who split up, became Nick Murphy. We have Angus and Julia Stone, of course. Confidence Man, Kalo, Liars, and of course we do still Nick Cave. We used to do Nick Cave through Mute. Now we do Nick Cave in France through Cobalt. Yeah, lots of Australian artists.
And now you're working with even more Australian artists through Inertia. Tell us what, I guess, inspired that move. Why did you invest in Inertia? What is it about this market?
It's about people.
Which people?
Those people there.
Okay.
You know, you meet people and you just want to work with them. Okay. It's not like, obviously the strategy of PS has been and still is to have an international network and to be able to offer on the ground a culture which you can rely upon, and you can compare being the same in France, in the UK, in America, in Australia, in Germany, everywhere. It's about people who love music, who are nice people, who are real people, who are ethical people, and who have that right balance between the love of music and the understanding of business. You know, money is not the most important thing, but it is important. You need to understand business. You need to understand it's a business. On the other hand, it's a people's business, and and it was a natural fit. So again, it's based on a moment, an opportunity, and meeting someone and just feeling there's we have something in common.
Okay, yeah, well, look, I'm happy that you're here. We are a great market for music, so well done, good choice. What other markets are you interested in? What's, I guess, I mean, you say you're a global company, but where are you really excited and bullish about your business?
But we have to stay with Inertia. We're not finished with Inertia.
Oh, I thought you'd finished the
No,
Inertia.
no.
Okay.
No, Inertia is exactly what PS could be everywhere or vice versa. It's a natural fit. And I think the logic is for our artists to be with a company which can, be represented by them in Australia. But also, I think now Inertia has the opportunity to offer to the artistic community in Australia a unique situation, because Inertia today is the only company in Australia, according to my knowledge, which can offer an international network. Colin can make a commitment to an artist and say, you will be released everywhere in the world, and he can make that promise and keep it. I don't know if anybody can do that else than Inertia in Australia.
I think you're right.
And that's a unique situation. And so before we were with Mushroom, and I love Gudinski and Nick Dunche did a great job for us until we had this opportunity to partner up with Inertia, but it was a one-way situation. It was a one-way business. And with PS and Inertia, we can bring our artists in Australia. We know they'll be well taken care of, but we now also can offer an international network to Inertia and to the managers who will decide to trust us, and that's very exciting.
I think that is exciting. So can I ask that other question?
You can.
I think
Brazil.
Brazil.
Brazil, Mexico, Russia. I think we're making now 40,000 euros a month of streaming income from Russia. That's more than we ever did in 35 years of income from countries where we couldn't sell vinyl CDs, cassettes, or even iTunes before. So we get income from Bhutan. Okay, maybe 15 euros a month. But Bhutan is a country we never made any income from. So with streaming, we have opportunities that we never had before. And Mexico, for instance, I think is our third or fourth biggest streaming market.
So do you see that shifting, I guess the traditional balance of the music industry from being so sort of North America and Europe focused?
It's definitely spread out.
Okay.
And when you have catalog, it is very exciting to be able to see that there is that income, steady income every month, which allows you the margin and the financial income to be able to invest in new artists.
Sure.
So, yeah, we have income from South America. It's very, very exciting. Asia it's only the beginning. China is maybe the holy grail. Who knows? But there is a future. There is something to look at for new markets to open up for income we didn't previously were able to generate.
Okay. So I want to go back and I want to, I guess, ask some questions about your working relationship with Michele. I think it's actually something else, this idea that you've been working with a friend for 35 plus years. Tell us about that. I mean, working with any colleague is hard, but 35 years is a long time.
Yeah, I've been longer in business with Michele than any private relationship, personal relationship I've ever had, and so same for Michele. So it's a friend, we met when in this shop, Casablanca Moon, in 1981, became business partners, and it's been 35 years of working together. It's hard, but also very rewarding to be able to rely on each other for so long. and we might be the longest business partnership in the industry now. But 35 years is a long time.
Yeah, it seems like a long time. I
Yeah.
mean, you wear it well.
Thank you.
And so, I get one of the things I said in the introduction. I'm interested to talk to you as an entrepreneur and as someone. I wonder how much time you spend thinking about the future of the organization and what's happening next. Can you divulge?
What's happening next?
Yeah.
More of the same, I think.
Okay.
Just making sure that we hold our ground and we work with the right people, and we want to carry on working with great artists and great labels and great people, and that's what the company is about.
Okay. In a second, I'm going to throw this open for some questions from the audience. I'd be interested if you have any, so please do think of some. Now, I have lost my spot, and I apologize. Looking at your business, one of the things that really excited me, and you corrected me, I thought you had invested in a hip-hop label, and you told me no, it was specifically French hip-hop.
Well, we invested in a department.
In a department, okay.
Yeah, in an urban department.
Okay.
So it's label or licensing or distribution.
Yeah. Do you think you have the company has an affinity with certain genres?
Well, we do from classical music to rock and indie music.
Okay.
Yeah, well, with certain genre and electronic. I mean, electronic music was the genesis of Pias, really. We started with Front 242, and in the 90s we did FCOM with Laurent Garnier and Saint-Germain and the whole French touch thing. So we probably have an affinity with electronic music, in what is called indie music, rock, and probably less with hip hop. But I think that's a mistake. We should adjust to that.
Is that something that will grow as you develop the company in America? What's your situation there?
I don't know. America, we go really steadily. We primarily don't do our own. We don't sign many acts in America yet. It's an evolution. Slowly, it's a very big market. It's an expensive market. A lot of non-American companies have failed in America, so we just want to take it at a slow pace, and certainly not compete with advances and compete with big money in America yet. Or ever.
Okay. Hopefully one day.
Yeah, but I mean, advances, we've competed, our competition through the years have been mainly competition with big checkbooks. So
Okay.
we usually have a smaller checkbook, but we have a network and we have other things to offer.
Sure. Now, there was another wonderful quote. There's a few things I found, but one of the things I'm really interested in, and I really enjoy about, reading the PS handbook, for example, and other times where you've spoken, I guess is this passion for the sector, the independent sector as a whole. What do you think are the big challenges we face at the moment as an independent sector?
A big challenge we face. The whole streaming thing is great because it allows catalog to have a new life, and that's why you see growing figures of the industry again. But I'm concerned about the majors controlling that, obviously. In the 80s, they were controlling, in the 90s, they were controlling the radio, they were controlling the supermarkets, and we battled through that. There's the same danger today. And really, it's about breaking new artists, and somehow it's much more difficult, or seems more difficult, to break big a new artist these days. It takes a lot of time, far more time than it used to. So it's become a much slower market, and the investment has to be spread out in a much longer period, even longer than before. So that might be the challenge. But in this industry, everything changes all the time. One truth today, tomorrow is a different truth. So if you interview me or ask me the same question in a few months, it might be different. It's an exciting industry because of those changes. It's very tiring as well to keep being on the ball of changes, but that's what keeps us young. Is you can never stay still, and yeah, I personally like it.
I hope this is not a controversial question, but do you think it's funny that people don't discuss, when we talk about streaming, I feel like we're only talking about, well, at least in Australia, one or two companies. Are you worried about, I guess you kind of just said that, but are you worried about the fact that a company like Spotify or Apple, which is meant to provide an even playing field, that they won't be able to maintain that sooner or later the influence of the major labels or the bigger money will start shutting out indies?
Well, it already does. I mean, of course we have to be concerned about how and who will control the big playlists. And that's something which we have to all be concerned about. Spotify have been amazing. They have saved the industry in a way, and they were very, and still are very close to the independence. Even though now with the bigger money and what is at stake, it's kind of a concern. But that's why as independents we rely on Merlin and we rely on Impala to make sure that the independents are not sidekicked from Spotify and Apple. And I think they need us, and certainly as a community they need us, and that sense of community is even more important than it ever used to be.
Okay. And on the flip side, has your business changed much with, I guess, the vinyl renewal of the past 7 or 8 years? Are you making investments in that world at all?
I mean, like buying a pressing plant?
Yeah. Can you in Australia?
Sure.
Great. Okay. We'll talk about that later.
I think I've inquired about that, and apparently it's very difficult to. It's a very difficult business.
If you could just cover all that international shipping, that would be really great.
Okay, I'll do my best.
Yeah.
Do my best. Secretly Canadian and Epitaph have bought a pressing plant together, and
yeah. Do you think that's a good investment?
Ask them. I think it's a beautiful investment. I don't know if it's a good investment. There's certainly a demand, but apparently technically it's a nightmare.
Yeah, I imagine.
It's a nightmare.
Okay. I'm going to open up for...
It's not our core business. Our business is to sign artists and service labels.
Okay. Any questions out there? A few. Hello.
What are the similarities and differences between you and Michele that have created such a successful partnership?
No questions.
That's a great question.
The similarities or the what?
And the differences. I'm assuming that you have different characteristics.
Very different, yeah. I'm impatient, and he's more patient. Yeah.
So you combine together to make middle level of patience?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Anything? I mean, I think you studied economics, right?
Kind of, yeah.
And he was running a record store. I mean, do you see? Did that take you both down a different path within the same business, or?
No, because my studies were really. I wasn't studying much.
Okay.
Was part. And Michele's a brain. He's incredibly intelligent.
Okay.
So he's the most intelligent person I know, but like he's got a bit the syndrome of a genius. You know, his thinking is incredible, and I'm more doer, and so I kind of inspire myself from. I guess I haven't really reflected on that, so I'm just coming up with it now. Yes, I am. He's a genius, but and I'm more of a pusher and shover, and his sense of analysis and understanding is incredible, and I'm more kind of all over the place.
That was a great question then. Stumped. So another one. Yeah. Colin.
If you had a magic wand, what's the single biggest issue in the music industry you'd like to fix?
Thank you, Colin.
If you had some kind of genius at your disposal.
The single biggest problem in the music industry. Oh, get rid of the cunts. According to my definition of it, of course. There's a lot of people.
Can you define those people?
A lot of people who are in the industry and not for the love of music and who are fake and are sharks basically, and we try and preserve ourselves from that.
No asshole
from
policy.
Those predators.
Yeah, the predators. That's a great answer. That's another one I'm taking down. Okay. Is there any more questions? No.
You were talking before about big emerging markets for you, like Brazil and Russia and Mexico. Do you have any kind of relationship with an organisation like with Inertia in any of those territories? Are there any plans for that?
I didn't hear what you said. Relationship with who?
Your relationship with Inertia.
Yes.
Do you have anything similar in those large emerging markets you're talking about being excited about?
Not in the way of owning a company in those territories, but we do have one or two people working for us in South America, one person in Mexico. We do have a distributor in Russia and everywhere in Asia as well. And I think at the moment the market doesn't justify having our own overhead and a real company, an own company in those territories, but maybe one day the volume will justify doing this.
Okay. What are the greatest lessons you've learned along the way?
Sorry?
What are the biggest lessons you've learned along the way? The most important things you've learned?
Beware of the cunts.
Beware of the cunts. Can you name some?
Never stay still.
Okay.
Everything changes every day. Remain humble. Never think you've made it. A hit a day keeps the doctor away.
A hit a day keeps the doctor away. Yeah. So easy.
What else? No, I mean, you have to take risks, and you have to make decisions. Even it's better to make a wrong decision than no decision, because no decision, you stay still. If you make the wrong decision, you can change the decision, and to me, yeah.
You talk a lot about about learning from your mistakes. What are some of those?
All of the things I've just told you about, many mistakes. Many mistakes.
Okay.
But inertia is not a mistake. The mistake is trying to do business with someone or a situation where it looks good, but your gut says it's wrong, but it looks like, not following your gut is a mistake. Something which looks good on paper, but you are working with someone you don't really trust, or in a situation you don't really understand, or you feel. I think having a feel and an instinct for something, to me, is important. And every time I've made mistakes was usually when I wasn't following my instincts.
Okay. It's good to know. I think it's nice to know that you still do business with your guts.
Of course.
So you mentioned earlier that you, some of your early heroes, the people that were inspiring you at the beginning of your business, who inspires you now?
Well, still the same, the same people. I mean, I've been inspired by Daniel Miller. I've been inspired by Martin Mills. Still inspired about how bright he is. I was inspired by Richard Branson.
Still inspired by Richard Branson?
No, but I mean, Virgin in the 80s and 90s was a model. It was incredibly attractive and a real magnet for artists, and he invented new and groundbreaking marketing techniques at the time, which inspire me to think about is a new thing today.
Okay. Any younger people? I mean, you're talking about your contemporaries. I'm not fishing for compliments, it's fine.
There's this guy called Nick. Well, there's loads of people. I mean, there's people in my company who inspire me. I like to be challenged. I like to challenge people. There's not many new exciting labels. I don't want to compliment the person in the room here, but Partisan is one of the few independent labels with a real artistic vision. And it's hard to find new and young entrepreneurs in this business. And we should do everything we can to support the ones who are the new breed of independent labels, like Partisan.
That's nice. Okay, we're almost out of time. Is there anything else that you want to impart, wisdom-wise, to this audience?
Well, the Independent Echo, is something you should try and read. I've enjoyed, and you were asking who inspires you. Every person I meet, I learn, and I interview, I learn something from. And I really wanted to meet and interview like-minded people or entrepreneurs in the business to find out if we had something in common, and really for me to learn from them. And there's something to be learned in every interview I do, from Brett Gurewitz or from Michael Gudinski or from Seymour Stein. All the people I've interviewed are really inspiring to me.
I mean, you told me that a lot of them are just mad.
Yes, we are mad. We are mad. For the financial community, we are mad because our purpose is not necessarily money. It's not necessarily the financial side. The purpose is far more egotistic than money. It's about having a vision and wanting to fulfill it. It's about wanting to do things. It's about love. Love is not a shameful word. It's about loving what you do, doing it every day, and being mad. And these people are mad. And mad is good. Mad is refreshing. Mad is entertaining. Mad makes you smile. We want to go to work and smile every day. Be happy. It's about happiness. Not doing a job just because you have to do a job, or not doing a job because you earn money out of it. Money is important, but just the fulfillment of having a vision and having a belief in an artist, and seeing that artist breaking, seeing a career happening, being into a room of 800 people 3 months after being in a room of 100 people in the same band, and seeing a band breaking, and knowing that a year later or 2 years later you'll probably see them in an arena, and you and your team were part of making that career, and were helping and helped in breaking an act and making it meaningful. That's the purpose. That's exciting. And I think that's the urge we have at PS, is to do that every day and more, and just have this pleasure of self-fulfillment, of being part of building something. And that's incredible. And that's why I meet people, find out if they have the same feeling or not, and get to know what their purpose is, why they did this. When they are alone in the mirror, are they as confident in front of the mirror alone? Are they as confident as they appear to be? How do you build your confidence? It took me years to build confidence. Being confident is a skill, it's an art, it takes time. But I'm sidetracking. But
Something about looking in the mirror.
yeah, looking in the mirror and just saying, what am I doing? Am I doing the right thing? Do I have a purpose in this business? And what can I bring to the table to what I do? Am I doing the right thing? And entrepreneurship is a very lonely exercise. You feel very lonely sometimes at the top, and you don't know if you're doing the right thing. And all these people have had their moments of doubts, and moments of despair, and moments of excitement and self-belief. And PS has been in 35 years has been a roller coaster. There've been some great moments, those bad moments. But what I've also learned is everything is a cycle. And when you are at the top and you think you're doing great, remember that you can go the other way. And when you are not doing so well, it's a cycle, and you'll be doing better later. During the 5-6 years when the industry changed, when the pirates were there, and when the internet everything was being copied and ripped off, and there was no Spotify, it was a really dull and scary moment. There was what was the future, and then Spotify arrived and streaming arrived, and it was better. Now there's other issues. How do you break an artist in this market? But all of that, we're there to find the answers and find and build the future of our company together with Inertia here and with the PS territories everywhere. But I believe that if you believe in your artist, you believe in music, and you do things in your way with your beliefs, there's a sure future for everyone who have passion in what they do.
Well, I think on that note, we'll leave it.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Kenny.
Cheers.